Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn. So tonight we have Rivkie Melamud, and Rivkie teaches in Sparks and Beis Chaim Mushka high schools. She has taught the subject of Tefillah for the past 12 years and is excited to share some of that tonight. She also has a podcast on Tefillah called Tefillah and Your Personal Connection, so everyone can go check that out and learn more. And tonight, we want to give a very special thank you to our sponsors for tonight. Tonight is sponsored by Adina Kalmowitz. Thank you so much, Adina. Okay. I was like, where'd you go? And in merit of a refuah shlema for Miriam Bas Yeta and Yeshua's for all of Klal Yisrael. Tonight is also sponsored by Ita Jacobson in celebration of her birthday. So happy birthday to her. And thank you so much, everybody. A special shout out to Khani for helping set up tonight and everybody that came. So I'll pass this on to you if you're able to clip it onto your shirt.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I actually looked up your previous two classes on Tefillah just to get a feel of what was already said. And I was happy to hear that. I feel like all the introductions were done. We went through the ladder and the basic ideas. And today what we're going to be doing is going through Birchas Hashachar. Because we only have an hour and really we can spend the full hour on Maidani. I'm going to just bring several points which I found inspiring. And maybe at the end we'll take questions and comments, okay? So I want to start out giving some background specifically to Birchas Hashachar, and then we'll go into the specifics. And, it will probably be helpful if you have a sitter in front of you just to follow. Okay, so there are certain parts of Tefillah which, even if you're a woman and really busy and don't have time to say everything, you're supposed to say those parts, right? Birchas Hashachar is one of those parts. Yeah, like Birchas Hashachar, Shema, Shemana Esrei, and then, some other things, which really tells us that it's foundational to the davening, right? So just a little bit of background of how Birchas Hashachar came to be. So it actually goes way, way back to the times of David HaMelech. There was a plague which broke out at one point, and they realized that 100 people were dying every day from this plague. And David HaMelech instituted as a healing or a fixing that they should say 100 brachos a day. And that's what happened, and the plague stopped. Now, this was, a custom that David HaMelech established in a time of need, and it wasn't necessarily kept for all of times. At a certain point, it was forgotten. And later on, several generations later, Chazal found an actual source in Torah for this concept of saying 100 brachos a day. There's a pasuk which Moshe Rabbeinu says in Sefer Dvarim, Ma Hashem shayel me'imach ki'im liyira. What does Hashem ask of you? Just to fear him. And Chazal say, instead of ma, what, read it mea, which is 100. Hashem is asking of you 100, meaning to say these 100 brachos. Anyways, after the times, after Chorban Bayis Sheni, the Tanaim, they made a takana that we should say 100 brachos. Again, it didn't come out of nowhere. This was started in David HaMelech's times, but it wasn't necessarily kept. And it was at that point that they made this takana, we should say 100 brachos a day. And the way that we get these 100 brachos, besides, for specific benefits that we benefit throughout the day, is really from Birchas Hashachar as well as Shemana Esrei. That makes up, a great number of those brachos. Now, what is the idea of saying these brachos? So actually, the end of that pasuk, Ma Hashem shayel me'imach ki'im liyira. What does Hashem ask of you, but only to fear him? It's about Yirah Shamayim. And really, the idea of saying all these brachos and, for the benefits that we have throughout the day, as well as in the morning and Shemona Esrei and all of this, it's really, it's bringing out our Yira Shamayim. I mean, we know that as Yidden, we have Yira Shamayim somewhere deep inside. We have awe of Hashem, a recognition that Hashem exists, and a love of him, of course. But really, bringing Hashem into all the details of our life and doing this daily, that is really what brings our Yira Shamayim to the forefront of our awareness. And, that's why the Chachamim established that we should make sure to say all of these brachos. It's a lot of brachos if you think about it, like 100 brachos throughout the day, but they recognize we're in a world. And in fact, this is after Chorban Bayis Sheni, when the world is getting darker and we need more light and we need reminders, a lot of reminders. So that is in general. Now, what's very interesting is that you went through the ladder of davening. Davening is really us reaching up towards Hashem. It's interesting because, you contrast like Torah. The world stands on three pillars, right? Torah, Tefillah, Tzedakah, Gemilas Chasadim. So Tefillah is really us going upwards towards Hashem, and Torah is bringing Hashem down here, right? So Tefillah is really going up, and we know the whole idea of a ladder, that it goes in steps. The lowest step being Haida'ah, like you could say from Maida'ani through Haidu, really. And Birchas Hashachar is kind of part of that. And then we get to Shemona Esrei, which we're actually hopefully going to discuss as like a part 2. We're going to go into Shemona Esrei, which is at the top of the ladder. So what's very interesting is that Birchas Hashachar, I think we always say this, that the lowest and the highest are kind of connected in a way, right? The lowest really taps into the deepest in a certain sense. And we see these parallels between Birchas Hashachar and Shemona Esrei, one of them being the number 18. So Birchas Hashachar, there's different ways of counting it, but I think the most basic way is counting it actually from Hamapil. Hamapil is number 1 that we say before we go to bed. And then you count, there's 18 brachos. Okay, so that parallels Shemona Esrei. The significance of 18, there are several things brought down. One of the ideas of 18 is that it mirrors the spine. The spine, it says, has 18 vertebrae. And Tefillah is this, it's kind of functions as like the spine of our day, which is like the spine really brings all the energy down from the head to the entire body. And that's really what Tefillah does. It's like bringing energy into all the parts of our day, really, all the parts of us and all the parts of our day. So that's about the 18 brachos. And now I want to go through the general idea of, I guess, the pshat of what we're saying in these brachos, and then the Chassidus. Okay. The pshat of these brachos, one of the things that I guess I love about specifically these parts of davening, like Birchas Hashachar and Shemona Esrei, is that you don't even have to go really deep for it to be so meaningful. Like simply reading Perush HaMilos, I think it's very easy because they're talking about very like physical things. You can't not appreciate it, So I think honestly, like even simply reading, Perush HaMilos, can be very, very meaningful. And at the same time, we are going to go deeper and learn the Chassidus, which Chassidus always adds chayas and even more energy than already just Perush HaMilos will. So, okay, so on a pshat level, what is the idea behind all of these specific brachos, which we say every single morning? The idea is that, we have this really interesting phenomena that we go through an experience of 1/60th of death every single night, right? Where our neshama kind of retreats from our body, goes back up to its source, leaving our body kind of in a state of void, in a somewhat lifeless state. And that brings to the opportunity of being reborn again in the morning, which, reborn is obviously, imagine if we just like kept going and going and going and going. There's something beautiful about rebirth where, you wake up, it's a fresh start, it's new, Everything's new, everything is noticed, everything's appreciated. And the way that it was actually originally, before our times, is that as they were waking up and experiencing every one of these benefits, they would thank Hashem for it, right? So as they opened their eyes, Pakeach Ivrim, as they stretched, they said Matar Surim. Later on, it was instituted that we should first wash our hands and kind of just say all the brachas once we're already dressed and already ready, so that it can be in a more respectful way. But the point is that as Yidden, we really take nothing for granted. That is the idea. I think of like, there's a side of Kedusha and Klipa. Klipa, we know, is like entitlement. It's like, everything is coming to me. I deserve everything. Not noticing all the blessings, always needing more, right? The side of Kedusha is exactly the opposite, where nothing is taken for granted. Everything is viewed as a gift. There's such appreciation, which ultimately actually brings joy as well. It brings a lightness and a joy because, you realize you're well. So on a very simple level, Birchas Hashachar, we're waking up, we're new, and we are noticing all the basic benefits which Hashem gave us in the morning, and we are thanking Hashem for it. Now, there's nothing particularly Jewish about that, if you think about it, right? I mean, non-Jews can also really do this, right? They can wake up and thank Hashem for their sight and all of this. So there is a deeper level. As Yidden, we know, we have our physical selves, our human selves, our nefesh bahamis, and then we have our neshama, our nefesh elikis, and our ability to perceive and experience Hashem in this world. So on a deeper level, Chassidus explains that the word baruch doesn't just mean blessed or, thanking Hashem, but baruch actually means drawing down Hashem. Baruch Ata, we're drawing down Hashem himself. Every one of these brachos, we are drawing down Hashem himself and thereby becoming more godly people. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem becomes our strength. And by us becoming more godly people, Melech HaOlam, Hashem becomes more seen and revealed in this world, right? The Yidden are like the channel to reveal Hashem in this world. So according to Chassidus, every single one of these brachos, we are drawing down Hashem more in our life and in different aspects, which we're going to go into, which is basically telling us that every single one of the brachos has a physical pshat understanding and also its spiritual counterpart, on a neshama level. And every morning, again, all of these powers are renewed, our physical abilities and our spiritual abilities. What was I just going to say? Something just popped into my head. Okay, so before I go into the specifics, the Rebbe Rashav discusses that of the different steps in Tefillah, the ruchnius, godly light, which we experience in Birchas Hashachar, is extra powerful. And he explains it as follows. Nighttime is a time of darkness. And as I mentioned, it's not just dark in the world, but it's also dark in our bodies for us, right? You don't see all of our spiritual capabilities when we're sleeping. It's a time of darkness. It's a time of concealment. And it's a time where I guess what's mainly experienced in the world is the physical, which physical is concealment, right? So what happens when we wake up is that our neshama comes back into our bodies, right? Now, because during nighttime, our guf, our body was the dominant experience. So when we wake up, and you think about it, when a child is born, it's like their physical, their animalistic self is mainly what you see, right? And when we wake up in the morning as well, because we went through that nighttime and that time of void, and yes, our neshama comes back in, but it's like a birth. Our neshama is like almost in a very small, not very exposed, revealed. Sorry?
For some people, it only comes off the coffee.
Yeah, I was actually thinking as I was reading this, so the Rebbe Rashab explains that when you have the deepest darkness, you need the greatest light to pick you up from that space. So he explains that because in the morning, actually, we're coming out of a state of darkness, Hashem gives us and this is in the form of Birchas Hashachar, we're saying Baruch, 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 and we're drawing down the highest, most powerful godly light to empower our neshama. And I was actually thinking of it as like a spiritual coffee. We need a physical coffee to get us out of that state of sleepiness. In the morning, we also kind of need this spiritual boost to get us in touch with our neshama, to help us feel not just physical beings, but spiritual beings, on a mission and being able to perceive godliness and bring that and be a channel for that around us. So Birchas Hashachar, again, the Rebbe Rashab explains, is really the most powerful. Of all the steps of davening, he goes through all 4 steps and what they're symbolic of, and he says Birchas Hashachar is the most powerful. He compares it to how when the Yidden were in Mitzrayim, it says Hashem himself had to take them out because it was such a deep darkness. So he literally compares Birchas Hashachar as that, Hashem is picking us up. Okay, fine. So having said that, let's go through some of the specifics. I'm going to open the siddur and go through each part, and we'll see what we get through, Sure. Do you want to save it till the end, or is it? Sure. Okay, so it's a piece from Hemshech Tafrei Shayin Beis. I think I have all the sources here. If anybody would like to see them inside, I'm happy to share it after or send it. Okay, so we start with Maida'ani, obviously. Again, I can have a whole class just on Maida'ani. I usually do. Maida'ani, we know, for one, we're told that it's the Rebbe's favorite tefillah, right? But it's not just we're told from Reb Simchana who asked the Rebbe, but fact is, the Rebbe spoke about Maida'ani a lot. Specifically in the latest years, Tafshin Nun Aleph Nun Beis, there were, if I'm not mistaken, a few sichas that the Rebbe delved into Maida'ani, kept coming back to this point of Maida'ani. Maida'ani is a really Mashiach-tic tefillah. It's a tefillah that actually was not instituted with the rest of Birchas Hashachar. Originally, people woke up in the times of the Tanaim. They woke up, they said Elokai Neshama. They were holy enough that they could say Hashem's name. As it turns out, later on, if I'm not mistaken, Maida'ani is only 400, maybe 500 years old. It's not even that old. When we became on a lower level, we wake up, we're tameh, we cannot say Hashem's name. So they had to make up another tefillah, which doesn't have Hashem's name, called Maida'ani. Now, Chassidus, and the Rebbe highlights this a lot, Chassidus always flips everything upside down. So whatever looks as like a negative, oh, we're not holy enough, so we had to come up with another tefillah that doesn't have Hashem's name, is on a lower level. Chassidus flips it upside down and says, Maida'ani lefanecha ve'el-chai v'kayim. We're not saying Hashem's name, but why are we not saying Hashem's name? It's not just because we're tameh and we can't say Hashem's name, but because there is an aspect of Hashem that is beyond a name. A name is already a description. There's Hashem himself that goes beyond a name. And it's to that, I don't even want to say aspect, it's to Hashem himself that we are literally talking to when we wake up in the morning. And which part of us is talking to Hashem's very essence? You always meet somebody at the level that you're at. When you're having a conversation with somebody, you meet them at, right? If we're talking to Hashem's essence, it's our essence speaking to Hashem's essence, that nameless part of us. It's that part of us that cannot, as it says in the Ayam, cannot become tameh. It's way deeper than the whole idea of tama. And it is that part of us that is expressing this very simple tefillah, which is Maida'ani lefanecha. So what are we saying when we're actually saying Maida'ani lefanecha? Again, on a very basic level, thank you, Hashem, I am alive. Before I go into any specifics, I literally just woke up, I'm breathing, I'm alive. I don't take that for granted. Now, Chassidus, again, highlights that this isn't just, again, a guy lahavdil can also say that. Thank you, Hashem. Wow, I woke up this morning. But for a yid, what is the definition of life? Is the definition of life that I'm able to breathe like a human? That I'm able to like just be alive and walking and talking? So if you look at my da'ani levanach melech chai v'kayim, shechazarta bi nishmasi, that you return to me my neshama. So the Rebbe points out, we could just say that you gave me life. What's that you gave to me my neshama? Or talking about a Yiddish neshama. We're not just thanking Hashem that we're alive, we're thanking Hashem that we are alive, that I'm alive today as a Yid. As a Yid who is connected to Hashem, and again, who's a channel for Hashem in this world. That's what we're grateful for, not just the fact that we are physically alive. Another thing that I wanted to point out, which I think about a lot, we add this word bechemla. We always describe how Hashem returned our neshama, which is bechemla. Now, how do you translate bechemla? With mercy, right? I'm trying to look. Yeah, mercifully. Now, the common used word for mercy is rachmanis. Chemla is a specific type of mercy, which we see this in a pasuk, vayachmal shal al hatzayin. The type of mercy that chemla is, it's there's two types of mercy. One of them is like nebach, like, you're so distant, you're so low, and like, I have mercy on you, I have rachmanis on you. Another type of mercy is like, you're so special, and it's like a deep caring for something that is of value. That's chemla. That's how the word chemla is actually used in a pasuk. Vayachmal shal al hatzayin. Shal, it says he had mercy on like the best sheep, like because it was dear to him. So in a letter of the Rebbe actually points to this idea and says that what we're actually saying in essence is that Hashem, you made me alive this morning, bechemla, with this deep care. And what that means in a practical sense is, I know whatever you're giving me today is only what I have the tools and what to deal with and what I can handle, because you're giving me my life with a deep mercy and care. So it's like you're going into this day knowing that Hashem is giving you exactly what you can handle, nothing more. And then Rabbat Munasecha, again, there are many different ways of explaining this. I've never seen the source for this inside, but I've heard it quoted so many times that, we're saying, Rabbat Munasecha, your faithfulness is great, that Hashem has so much faith in us. Like he's giving us a new day. He has so much faith in what we're going to do with that day. The other way of looking at it is that we're saying Hashem's faithfulness is so great. We went to sleep, we entrusted our soul, and Hashem was faithful and gave it back. And that also reminds us that Hashem will as well be faithful in doing Tchias HaMesim, because what we experience in the morning is literally a mini Tchias HaMesim. If you think about it, we're in a state of 1/60th of death, and Hashem gives us back our life. We become alive again. We become reborn. And when we wake up in the morning, we're like, wow, Hashem, you are faithful to do that. You are also faithful to do Tchias HaMesim, the same thing on a bigger scale. Okay, that is my da'ani. All right, I'm going to try to go a little faster. I feel like I'm spending so much time, and there's so much to go through. Okay, Netilas Yadayim. So Netilas Yadayim, as we know, when we go to sleep, because there's a void, our body is filled with tumah, it leaves our body and it stays at our fingertips, right? And, we wash actually twice in the morning, once to remove the tumah, and another time, right before we say brachos, actually, Netilas Yadayim, which is kind of like they did in the Beis HaMikdash, where we're raising ourselves up to a higher level of Kedusha to be ready to serve Hashem. And I just want to share the Chassidus on the idea of Netilas Yadayim. I think it's very, very powerful. And again, just something to think about, to make these, little things that could just be like routine that we do in the morning to make it more meaningful. So our hands, which is what we're washing, are expressions or symbolic of our midas. okay, our emotions. The most basic emotions is chesed on the right and gvura on the left. And then all the other emotions kind of stem from that. When we wake up in the morning, as I mentioned before, we're not in the most spiritual holy state. You know, if you are, that's pretty cool, like a tzaddik, you know. Maybe tzaddik can wake up in that state, but for most of us, we wake up, you know, whether it's annoyed or like just feeling all the emotions of our nefesh mehamis, really. We're very irritable at that time. Usually, again, some people wake up in a really good mood, but regardless, our emotions are pretty chaotic. Like a child, actually. I mentioned before, we're like reborn. It's like a child. So our hands are emotions. And what we do is we pour water on our hands. And what is water? So water, which is cold, is the idea of intellect. Like intellect is cold. And us pouring water on our hands is actually, we're taking our intellect and we are pouring it over our hands to direct these emotions and thereby be able to use, emotions are good. We want emotions. Emotions are life, it's expression. But we want them to be directed by the parents. You think of it as like this chaotic child that their emotions are all over the place. And when they just have that regulated parent to help them direct that, you know, I think of today's Hayamim about the thief and all these positive traits, you know, they just need to be directed. So that's the pouring the water on top of our emotions. We are directing our emotions. And we say netila sedayim. Netila means to remove. By directing our emotions with our intellect, we are removing all the negative aspects that can come with emotions. Okay, that is netila sedayim. Just another thing I want to point out. Netila sedayim is actually the first bracha that we're saying for a mitzvah. Okay, we say Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvahs. Hashem is mekadesh us, like a man is mekadesh a woman through his mitzvahs. So, yeah, I think it's just special. You know, the other brachas are not mitzvahs per se. Netila sedayim is a mitzvah, which we're saying a bracha in that way. Okay, then we have Asher Yatzar. Okay, so what's really interesting is that we have like one bracha for the guf, the body, and then we have it like kind of neshama where we go into the neshama and thank Hashem again in more detail with using Hashem's name for our neshama. And you know, you think about it, like maybe we should just like kind of merge the two, like we're neshama and guf, like just like, you know, say it in one. Thank you, Hashem, for my body, which is just a vessel for my soul, right? But what's actually interesting is that Adam Arishan, we know he was first created as a body, different than all other creations, by the way. All other creations, it just says Hashem created them, which means their body and their soul were created together. But Adam, it says Hashem took dust from the earth, formed him, and then Hashem blew a soul of life into him. Hashem created them separate, which is kind of interesting because what that tells us is that in a certain sense, our bodies are like the lowest creation, the most physical. We're created just physical. And our neshamas, we know, is the highest thing that exists. It's higher than everything else in creation. And like we are a combo of both of them, which makes us, you know, especially able to really lift up the entire world. Again, being the highest and the lowest. So in Asher Yatzar, we are thanking Hashem for our body. It's like just a very physical bracha. I don't know, I'm thinking like even probably a guy can say this. Okay, just I'll point out just a couple things. First of all, something interesting, there are 45 words in our nusach. By the way, there are other nuschais of Asher Yatzar. I've seen like on the wall, sometimes you'll like say it from a wall in like a different shul, Chabad, and you'll notice that they say like Raifei Chayle Chol Basar, something like that. There's a couple differences. Anyways, our nusach has exactly 45 words, which is the gematria of Adam. Just interesting to know. The other thing, so we say Asher Yatzar Asa Adam Bechachma. Hashem created us with wisdom. One of the things that, you know, we notice about the human body is there are so many details working. You know, if you've ever, I remember one of those Asher Yatzar papers hanging up, literally went through each part of the body and what it is doing on a second-to-second basis. It is like mind-blowing, the amount of detail. And that's Chachma. Chachma is in all the details. You know, it's not just like one general thing, but Hashem literally created our bodies with wisdom. And yeah, we mentioned the openings and the closed areas, the closed compartments, like our heart and our lungs and all of that. And, you know, how if one of those things weren't working, we literally wouldn't be able to survive. We're being grateful. You know, it's very interesting because we don't wait to become sick for our bodies. Sorry, to be grateful for our bodies. And it's working. I know a lot of times, like, you know, all of a sudden somebody hurts something and they're like, oh my gosh, how could I not have appreciated my legs or whatever it is? And here it is, like, no. Again, countless times a day, we say Asher Yatzar, and we don't really mention anything about sickness here. Roifei chol basar, Hashem heals all flesh. We don't, again, mention chayle chol basar. Hashem is healing the sick. Simply that Hashem is keeping us healthy by allowing our body to keep working. Now, we do end off the bracha, umafli la'asais, wondrous to do. What are we talking about here? What is so wondrous? Hashem heals all flesh, umafli la'asais, and works wondrously. Why are we mentioning that, and what is that referring to? So again, there are several different explanations. One of them is simply just our digestive system, how it knows what to do, right? Takes in the good food and lets out the waste. Another explanation is that our body is such a wonder in that how can something physical hold something spiritual? That is a wonder. A wonder is something that's like shocking, that doesn't really make sense. You know, normally a vessel has to match up with whatever's in the vessel. And it's kind of interesting because here we have a physical guf that is somehow able to hold a spiritual soul. So that's umafli la'asais. Okay, Elikai Neshama. Okay, Elikai Neshama is a beautiful, beautiful tefillah where we go into detail about the journey of our neshama. Now, if you think about it, like, why are we going through the journey of our neshama? You know, we say, the neshama that you gave me is pure. You created it, you formed it, you blew it into me. You guard it within me. V'ata asid litla mimeni. In the future, you're going to take it from me and return it to me when Mashiach comes. Okay, so we go through literally the whole journey of the neshama. And it's kind of interesting, like, why do we have to mention this whole journey every single morning? So one way to look at this is that we are giving context to our life right now. You know, part of what brings confusion in life or a lack of direction in life is being small-minded, where you kind of just see yourself in the moment right now, and that's all that exists for you. That's where we kind of forget what we're meant to do, and we could get really caught up and thrown off by little things, right? What we're doing over here is giving context that actually where we are right now is a small piece of our soul's journey. Our soul started out before, you know, up there, it came to this world. It started out in the world of Atzilus, that's Tahirahi. You know, it was even beyond being a creation. It only turned into a separate entity, Ata Barasa, in the world of Bria. And we go through the different steps, it's talking about, referring to the four worlds, till our neshama made it down to this world. But even so, you know, Hashem has to guard our neshama, make sure that it stays in our guf, because our neshama doesn't actually want to be here. And then we know that ultimately the neshama leaves and comes back when Mashiach comes. And again, the point is, our life as we know it right now, like in Gullus, is a small fraction of our life. And if we can just see it in that whole context, it reminds us, you know, I think of, you know, the mashal with like the chicken fat, how, you know, people lose sight. So it's very easy to lose sight in this world, and just reminding ourselves where we came from, where we're going, what this is all about. You know, this is about making a home for Hashem, that we all come back down here and experience a world together with Hashem. And, you know, putting our lives in that context, it is a reminder, it keeps us focused. Okay. We are now going to go through the brachos. And what I'm going to do is go through each one of them on a physical, basic level, and then on a spiritual level. Again, we're thanking Hashem for our physical ability and our neshama ability. Okay, so we thank Hashem for that He gave the rooster an understanding to be able to distinguish between night and day, right? So on a physical level, we are thanking Hashem for the alarm clock. You know, nowadays it would be the alarm clock. We don't really get woken up with the rooster. You know, the rooster, it was very interesting because the rooster had a certain wisdom that even before it turned like actually light outside, it was able to distinguish that moment of separation between dark and light. And the fact that we still say this bracha, even though we don't have a rooster, obviously there has to be more to it.
But even then,
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird bracha to an alarm clock. Like, we don't think Hashem that the donkey could carry weights and like,
Well, it impacts us ultimately. So we're thanking Hashem for things that impact us, right? The fact that the rooster, you know, knew this difference, it was a wake up. That's kind of what started our day.
like thank Hashem that the sun came out. What she said.
I guess we're talking about our journey in waking, our process of waking up personally. So you're saying really it's the sunlight that wakes us up? Well, there was something before the sunlight that woke them up, which was the rooster. A deeper understanding, or another way of understanding this, sechvi is actually used in a pasuk to mean heart. And what we're saying here is that Hashem, and this is really the foundation for everything, which is why it's the first bracha. Within our heart, Hashem gave us Bina, this understanding of knowing the difference between being able to differentiate between light and dark. And light and dark are code words for that which is good, that which is holy, and that which is the opposite of good and the opposite of holy. And we have this ability, again, this is like, you know, at the depth of our soul, we are able to differentiate. We know, we have this deep sense of what's right and what's wrong, of what's, you know, when we really go inside, we know. We have a deep knowing. It goes, when I say deep knowing, it goes beyond like the seicha, which we're going to point to in the next bracha, okay? Okay, so that's the foundation of everything. Then we thank Hashem, Pakeach Ivrim, who opens the eyes of the blind. So yeah, thank you Hashem, we can see physically. You've probably heard of this idea, Einayim lahem layiru aznayim layishmo, right? There's a concept of being able to see, but not really being able to see, right? And what does that mean? If a person just sees the physical world around them, they can totally misunderstand what's actually going on, right? Which many people do. So a person can have eyes and you know, they could physically see, but they actually are not really seeing what's going on. So in this bracha, we are thanking Hashem for the chabad of our neshama, the ability to perceive truth, to perceive elikus. What this means practically is that, yeah, by using our brains and thinking about Hashem and learning about Hashem, Hashem's reality, which is the reality of truth, becomes tangible. We look at the world differently, right? We look at the world and we're able to see it for what it really is. That is the eyesight, again, on a deeper level that we are thanking Hashem for, okay? Our seichel. The next one.
It's the basis of the living citizen.
Oh.
The glasses.
The glasses.
Sunglasses. And when you learn this, learn Torah the proper way, then you see the world through Hashem's.
Beautiful. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, then the next bracha, Matir Asurim. would be the chagas of our neshama, chesed, gvura, tiferes, which is the emotions. So matar asurim, they would say they're able to stretch. Okay, they open their eyes and they're able to, when a person is sleeping, their movement is actually limited and they're able to stretch. Now, stretching basically, for the most part, is your right and your left side, right? Your arms, which, as I mentioned before, is the idea of midais. And this is the ability that we have, again, really through our seichel, by actually thinking about truth. We start, our feelings follow that, and our feelings align with truth. So when we think about what's really meaningful in this world, is it physical things that are transient, that come and go, that, or is it, connection to Hashem and what Hashem wants and all of that? So when we think about that, which is the idea of Pekech Ivrim, that enables our midas to be free, and our feelings will ultimately align with truth. That is Mater Surim. Zakev Kefufim would be, again, I don't know if you appreciate like the Hebrew words, but it would be Nehi, like the Netzach HaYisod, the lower forms of expression. So Zakev Kefufim, we're thanking Hashem that we can stand upright. And in this bracha, it really highlights this ability that we have, that although we are physical beings, we can get in touch with that which is higher than this physical world, like ruchnius, as well as the concept that, unlike animals, our brains are on top of our hearts, which are on top of our actions. And we have this ability of directing. We're not these like impulsive beings that just do whatever our hearts want, like animals, really. But we have this ability to, again, through filling our minds with truth, which will help us, feel aligned with truth, we can actually direct our actions as well, our outer expressions, that they will be in line with truth. Okay, so because the lower midas are, you think about it, there's like chesed, gvura, tiferes are the midas that are within us. There are feelings, how we feel inside, and the lower midas, netzach hayisod, are how we express those midas outwards. So it would be in the form of, victory, gratefulness, all of those things. Okay, so those three brachas are referring to, are, again, the term in Chassidus is our kaiches pnimiyim. Okay, the powers of our neshama that we operate on day to day within. Okay, I'm going to go through the other ones, try to go through a little quicker. So malbish arumim, we thank Hashem for clothing. Okay, so again, has a spiritual counterpart. What is a spiritual counterpart of clothing? So yeah, the mitzvahs. It says mitzvahs, specifically ma'aseh mitzvahs. Okay, action-based mitzvahs serve as clothing. If you could picture it, our nefesh bahamis, our like human self, it has a neshama deep inside, right? However, it starts out as like being unclothed, in a sense of, okay, unclothed meaning, yes, there's a neshama deep inside, but it just feels like human. Ultimately, when we put on the neshama's clothing, when we do ma'aseh mitzvahs, when we decide that we are going to do what Hashem wants of us, Kabbalah Sol, it explains that it's like putting this big garment on us that now, you picture it like, imagine, we all have joy inside of us. You put on this like happy garment and all of a sudden you're able to like feel that joy, right? So picture it. We have this godly soul inside of us, the neshama. Again, we wake up feeling just human. When we put on ma'aseh mitzvahs, we do a mitzvah that is a garment of the neshama, and all of a sudden we're able to feel the neshama. So that is the garments. Hanei Tzeleyev Kayach was actually added later in the times of the Ga'ainim, when people became weaker, and not just physically weaker. We're thanking Hashem for energy, simple energy. It actually says that the bracha was mainly instituted because they became weaker spiritually. There were the tzaddikim and different people who were causing doubts in the validity of Ter Sheval Peh. and, putting down the believers. And it took like a real strength to, stand up. And so they instituted this bracha, Nais and Layev Kayach, that, Hashem gives us the Kayach that even in Galus times, we can be energized, we can be strong. Again, Begashvis and Baruchnius. So that's a nice and Layev Kayach. Roika Eretz Al Mayim is a really interesting bracha. We thank Hashem that he spread the earth over the water. Think about it. The four elements of the world, Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Afar, are in that exact order, because that, the highest is Eish, is fire, and the lowest is Afar. And that's actually, how it works, that, if you have water and earth is denser and it will float down. And we're thanking Hashem over here that he enabled that the earth can actually be above the water so that we can live on earth. Now, spiritually, what we're actually thanking Hashem for, this is really powerful, ever since Matan Torah. Right now, we should be.
You should. Here, you would be close to the water, but most of us, saying if not for the ground, we'd be on the water. And then we'd be made to float. Right, but really,
we'd probably also float down. Yeah, we basically wouldn't be able to live. Anyways.
But we live on the earth, like on the map, like imaginary water, walking on water.
Okay, so originally the way that it is that Ruchnius, spirituality, which is symbolic by water, the world of spirituality, what we call Alma Diskasia, is really higher. It's higher than the physical world, Alma Diskalia, the world that we see. Our world is lower. However, Hashem in his kindness, and this happened, more so by Matan Torah, Hashem raised up the earth, which is the physical world, over the spiritual world. And what does that mean practically? That by us doing physical mitzvahs, it is more powerful than spiritual service. We can spiritually meditate, go on some mountain and meditate about Hashem. We will not connect to Hashem on the same deep level as we will simply shaking a lulav and a nesrike. So Hashem raised the earth over the water is telling us that Hashem raised up the physical. And by the way, it's such a kindness if you think about it, because anybody can do a physical mitzvah. It doesn't take any readiness and it doesn't take any special abilities. If you are a human, you can do a mitzvah, right? So this is a kindness that Hashem gave us. It's so easy to connect. All you have to do is a mitzvah, like literally put tzedakah in, and you have the deepest connection to Hashem. So that's this bracha. Hamechem etzad gavar, really powerful bracha. Hashem guides the steps of man. Again, on a physical level, we're thanking Hashem that, we're simply able to walk around, not just to like stand up, but to walk, to get places. It takes different muscles to walk. It's not so simple. So on a deeper level, and this is in the Hayom Yom, we are thankful to Hashem that he guides the steps of man. He leads us exactly where our mission is. We don't have the foresight to know exactly where we're meant to be and where we're needed, but Hashem leads us there. And I think this bracha is a real.
Really nice if you let us more clearly.
He does. You know how clear it is when a person, is ever interested in knowing what Hashem wants of us. All they have to do is look at where they find themselves right now. Because Hashem puts you exactly where your soul needs to be right now. And it's such a comfort if you think about it. Yeah, obviously we still have to make decisions, but ultimately wherever we land up, that is exactly where we're meant to be. So that's Hamechem Mitzad Gavar. We're, thanking Hashem for all these tools that he gives us to do our mission in this world. Okay, Sha'asali called Turkey, Aizer Yisrael B'Gvura, Ita Jacobson can really be grouped together. On a physical level, we are thanking Hashem for these different garments, which are so helpful to us. Sha'asali called Turkey is, Hashem does all our needs. That's referring to our shoes, because our feet, our shoes actually hold our whole body. I don't know if anybody here has foot problems or shoe problems, but they can appreciate this. The whole you feels, different. When you're in good shoes, and it helps your posture, it helps the whole you. So kol tzarki, it's all of our needs literally are being held within those shoes. Hashem girds us with strength. That is referring to the belt, which, if you think about it, I think about it in the olden days, let's say, they had like one big piece of material, and then they had a belt which kind of wrapped it around them and made it more fitted. And again, it gives you strength. Also, you'll notice this bracha as well as the next bracha, Ita Jacobson, we mentioned a yid. That Hashem gives a yid a belt as well as a yid a hat. Because for a yid, the belt, the gartel, it doesn't just have a physical purpose, but it also has a spiritual purpose. It separates between the upper and lower part of the body, as well as a yarmulke, a head covering. It's not just like to cover the head and protect it physically, but also adds to Yiras Shamayim. On a spiritual level, I'm just going to go through this very quickly. These three brachos are thanking Hashem for the makif level of our neshama. The makif level of our neshama is that, how do I put this? I always say like our chaya and yechida. What it means in a practical sense is that there's a part of our neshama, no matter how worn out we are in life and how misaligned we are in life, there's a part of our neshama that is so powerful that stands around us and protects us. Like we won't lose that connection. So that is the idea of these garments. The final three brachos, I'm like not sure where to stop. I don't know. Tell me where to stop. Like
Keep going until you can.
I'd go another.
And because, because a person can, and I think we all go through this on some level, taint our soul throughout the day. Like our soul isn't necessarily, it says through machshava zarais, improper thoughts and different things, we can, we, by choice, sometimes a person chooses to attach themselves to the other side, to klipa. And that being so, when the neshama goes back up at night, it's a possibility that it says a spark of a non-Jewish soul can attach itself to the Jew, to the soul when it goes up there. And therefore, we thank Hashem every single morning that he protected us, our soul, when it went up there, and a spark of a non-Jew did not attach itself. The Rebbe says, had that happened, that a spark of a Jew attached itself to our soul, that could bring to who knows what. I don't know, a person might start behaving like a guy, who knows? So we're grateful every single morning that our neshama came back down and it's pure. Nothing, Huh? How do we, right. So the Rebbe says, how can we be sure? And the Rebbe says, look, the fact that we said, Hashem returned my neshama, we're sure. I don't know. We're confident somehow. Okay. The final bracha, Hamaver Shena, Me'ena Isnuma Me'apapait, actually leads, it's called a bracha arucha. It leads right into the Vihi Ratzayim. We're thanking Hashem that he removed the sleep from our eyelids. And again, yeah, okay, physically, a person would wash their face and be like, okay, now I'm really up. But spiritually, what we're talking about is, again, this idea of sleep and this idea of darkness, that Hashem kind of removes that state of spiritual sleep from us, and we are ready to serve Hashem. And that leads right into the Vihi Ratzayim. Vihi Ratzayim, again, these two Vihi Ratzayim, there's so much to say about them. I think about it a lot. If you actually, again, simply read through and translate the words, it's so powerful. Let me just put it like this. First of all, Yehi Ratzayim, you'll notice it's different than a bracha, right? Till now we've been saying Baruch Ata. Here we say Yehi Ratzon Hashem, may it be your will. It explains in Chassidus that this is a very, very powerful term that is used specifically for Tefillah, that we're asking Hashem, whatever you planned, could be you had other plans. For sure you have good plans, but may it be your will. And then we go and list all the things. Now, one way to think of these Vihi Ratzayim, you think about it, when we wake up in the morning, there can be so much to be afraid of. And in fact, many of us probably wake up with a lot of fears. Why is there so much to be afraid of? Because there's a lot that we're not in control of, if you think about it, right? We're not in control of if you look through the list, these are all things that we're not in control of. And when we say Vihi Ratzon, there's a recognition that it's true. There's a lot of things that could happen. There's a lot that I'm not in control of. And we ask Hashem in these Vihi Ratzons to protect us and to keep us safe. And one way of viewing the two paragraphs, the first one, the focus is we're asking Hashem to help us be, I mentioned it's part of Hamavir Shena, help us be awake throughout the day. Help us serve you throughout the day. And we go into all the details. Okay, we start out, help me simply do Torah mitzvahs. Help me not sin. Okay, help that I shouldn't come to a test. We don't want to be tested. There is, tests are a great thing and they lift us very high, but there is also the option of failing, and it's a danger. It's a spiritual danger, a test. We ask Levi Devi Zion, we shouldn't come to a state of shame. And we go into a lot of details, which I'm not going to go into right now. In the second Vihi Ratzon, we ask for more, that we be protected from more physical dangers. And I just want to quote something, and you know what? Yeah, I'll bring in 2 more points. I'm sorry, I'm like, if anybody has to leave, feel free, okay? I have a letter here from the Rebbe where somebody wrote to the Rebbe, they were complaining about having to deal with a very difficult neighbor. Shachen Ra, a bad neighbor. And the Rebbe says as follows. The Rebbe says 2 things. Al pi raiv zehu ba mecheser hakavana beBirchas Hashachar kishemispalim shetatzilenu fulu umishachen ra. Rebbe says, in most cases, this is coming because a person was lacking in kavana when he asked Hashem in the morning that he should be saved, protected from a bad neighbor. Second thing that the Rebbe says is that when a person works on the shachen ra, the bad neighbor inside his heart, which is the Yetzer Hara, he will stop saying it on the outside, basically, which I found very, very fascinating. Because, when we say this bracha and we ask, we should be protected from all of these things. And again, you could go through the list and read through it, from sickness, all of these things. Like, it's for real. The Rebbe is saying, you're encountering a bad neighbor, it's probably because you didn't have kavanah when you actually said this. Like, we ask for it, it's a real thing. Like, you say it. The Rebbe does, fun to check his messages as well. But that was the letter. Okay, that is basically Birchas Hashachar. At the end, we say Birchas Hashachar, which, if you read the line on top of Birchas Hashachar in our siddur, it says that a person should be extremely careful when they say Birchas Hashachar. In fact, it's usher to learn without saying these brachos. The idea of Birchas Hashachar is that we have to recognize that when we learn Torah, this is not a book of wisdom. It's not a book of wisdom that I can understand with my own seichel. When a person goes into learning Torah without saying Birchas Hashachar, it's very possible they will misinterpret and misunderstand Torah. And therefore, it's actually crucial to say this bracha. Remember that this is Hashem's wisdom, and we actually need Hashem's help to understand his wisdom, to go into it with humility. And right after we say the brachos, we then actually learn Torah. The same way you say any bracha, you have to do the mitzvah after, or whatever it is. You say bracha on an apple, you have to eat the apple, right? So here we say bracha on Torah, and then we go on to learn it. We say 2 brachos, or it depends how you divide it. Okay, so there are different ways to view it. Either there are 3 different brachos we say, and Baharev is one of them, where we're requesting that Torah should be pleasant for us and our children. Or another way to view it is Baharevna as part of the first bracha, where we're benching Hashem for Torah Shabbat Pet. The second bracha is benching Hashem for Torah Shabbat Sav. And then we go and read a portion from Torah Shabbat Sav, which is Birchas Kehanim. We're learning it. We're learning Torah. And then the Elu Devarim is a portion of Torah Shabbat Pet. Okay, that was a lot.
Thank you.
Sure.
That was amazing.
And yeah, I bless us all that davening should be a real connective experience, which is what it's meant to be, and really give us a boost, you know, give us a boost for our day, for our mission in this world. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody has any questions or wants to see any sources? Feel free.
I don't know about the